To FAA tonight. I'm Judy Bennett, I'm on the board. And I just want to make two quick announcements. This is actually our last family resource meeting kind of for the...
Dr. Andrea Davis, and she got her degree in psychology as well as a master's in theology from Fuller, and then went to Brown for her postdoc fellowship in infant mental health and early childhood disorders, and then came back to be a director of research at UCLA and to open up her own private practice. So now she offers at Greenhouse Therapies intensive in-home floor time services as well as psychotherapy throughout the ages from childhood, teenager, families, couples, adults. And she's written a wonderful book, which is available in the back if you'd like to look at it or to purchase one to share her wisdom. So we're very grateful you are coming to tell us about floor time in the older child.
Thank you. And we'll just turn this on. Thank you very much, Joyce. Wow, that's, you know it better, my bio better than I do, so good job. Welcome everybody. I'm so excited to talk with you about DIR Floortime and about Greenhouse Therapy Center, how we think about what this approach means for your older kids and teens. So I'll tell you this story of Greenhouse Therapy Center. We actually were the first place around that offered something that was much beyond what used to be available. If you were interested in floor time, how did you get it? You flew your family to see Dr. Greenspan and Dr. Weeder every 6 months if you could, and then came back and tried to do what they were doing with your child. And we developed a model of working much more intensively to support families in learning this very rich and beautiful model by being in the home many hours a week together to support families and parents and kids and teens. So we spent a long time training psych interns, marriage and family or social work interns, postdocs, in this whole approach, which is a developmental intervention. That's the alternative that many families have never heard of, and so I'll talk to you at the end about outreach and education and advocacy. So there are, the background is that, you know, developmental psychology is the basis for DIR floor time. It's not grounded in behavioral psychology, which is a whole different field within psychology. Developmental psychology is a rich, broad, and deep tradition of research and theory, and that grounds what we do and why we do it. And I want to explain a lot more of that to you. It's based on the whole notion that children's emotional development, their sense of themselves and of others, develops in the experiences that they have of shared affect and co-regulation in an attuned relationship. Children who feel felt, who are feeling that they're being held in the mind of the other, are helped to grow from infancy up through the stages. And we'll talk about what those stages are, but that normal developmental trajectory is used as our guide for thinking about helping kids who are having stumbling blocks and challenges. The idea being that it's adults who are the agents in developing growth-promoting relationships. And that is tricky when you're trying to promote growth in somebody whose brain is having some neurological glitches, and we'll talk a lot about that. But so that's not the normal way of developing a relationship. You need extra support, extra ideas, extra tricks up your sleeve to attune that relationship so that it is still going to be a growth-promoting relationship to help your child and your teen and young adults over the bumps and the hurdles that they're finding. In our program, we first started, all there was really for understanding this approach was the initial book, The Child with Special Needs. And we would share that book with the families we worked with, and we found it very rich, but it was a big chunk of information to process, and when everything is flying at you, it's not always easy to incorporate all of that information. So we found we were needing to break things down into more of a step-by-step approach, and that's what I want to show you tonight. Now, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about what is floor time. You can probably fill in some more. Can you see around me? I feel like I may be in your way a little bit standing here. Obviously, the first one that we want to throw out the window tonight is floor time is just for little kids. It's floor time is something you do on the floor. That's not very helpful. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, but we'll talk about a better way to think about the word floor. Or this is a very, very common one that we want to think about together. I already do floor time. I hear that a lot. I get it. I know floor time, meaning I'm fun, I'm playful, I'm flexible. It's a lot richer and it takes many years to get really deeply into this whole beautiful approach to developing human beings into beautiful people. And so it's not just meaning I'm a nice person, I'm a nice parent, I'm a nice therapist, I'm playful and flexible. It's a lot more than that. It's not just following a child's lead. That is one part, and we'll talk about other parts. This is a big one, and you want to see the hair go up on the back of my neck. Not because I put my hair up, but just because somebody says it. It's floor time, you'll hear it. Policymakers, people who are out there doing therapies will say, yeah, if a parent asks about it, they'll say, oh, but floor time is not evidence-based. And so I will talk with you about the research, and we have wonderful research that's grounded in a long tradition of developmental psychology and specific research on the efficacy of a developmental approach to therapies, or any others you want to fill in with floor time is just. You're probably going to be wrong if you think floor time is just. So hopefully I dispel those myths now tonight. People get mixed up when they hear all these letters, R-D-I-D-I-R. What are people talking about? So DIR is the theory behind floor time. It stands for Developmental Individual Differences, relationship-based approach to intervention with children with all kinds of developmental challenges. The D stands for this developmental sequence that's gleaned from observing how do infants and toddlers and preschoolers and school-age children and adolescents grow. What is that order, that sequence of what they can do? And if you think about applying that sequence, not just to life, not just to a life sequence, but to any particular moment, then you're starting to get a glimmer of why does this developmental sequence matter so much. So you're always thinking about the ground floor first. The regulation and attention has to come before anything else can happen. If you're not regulated, if you're here and you're not regulated, not much is going to happen in terms of you and I connecting, or you connecting up with what you already know. You have to be upregulated enough to listen and take things in. You have to be downregulated enough, and relaxed enough, and calm enough that you can focus. Then maybe there could be some social engagement, some possibilities for meaningful connection. And when that's going, then we think about the next stage, which is in a moment or in a life developmental sequence, reciprocal, back and forth communication, reciprocity, the core of what it means to have a good relationship. When that's going well, then we can think about some more complex communication, capacity 4, where I hold you in mind, I hold myself in mind, and we can therefore negotiate. We can co-create. From that, we can begin to develop ideas. We can start to be creative. We can start to use symbols symbolic play, pretend thinking, making new things up, getting creative. From there, capacity 6 is about emotional and logical thinking. So that's another misconception about Floortime, that it's just about social. It's just about social skills. That's another one you can get the hair standing up on the back of my neck if you start talking about social skills, as if it's a whole bunch of things in your pocket you could do to be a successfully social person. Pull out those skills. Social development is the hardest thing that we have to do as human beings. We all still struggle with it. It's a lifelong learning process. But it is only a part of Floortime. It's only part of DIR. DIR is about social, emotional, and intellectual development, and how Dr. Greenspan understood the brain for all of those things to be connected, interconnected. And then, so we want today to be thinking more about some of these higher capacities, and they're maybe less talked about and less understood, which is once we've got the emotional thinking happening and the logical thinking happening, that lays the groundwork for more complex thinking. We're talking about comparative thinking, we're talking about gray area thinking, and reflective thinking under 7, 8, and 9. So the I is about the individual differences, and this doesn't mean what it might sound like another myth or misconception that, everything has to be individualized. Well, we know that. What the I means is we have to be thinking about the neuropsychological profile of a child. What are their unique motor planning and sequencing strengths and weaknesses, sensory registration and modulation, their strengths, their weaknesses their challenges, their needs, visual, spatial, speech and language, executive functioning, all the pieces that affect who that person is as they face the challenges in their life. And it's a strength-based model looking at assessment as intervention. Understanding what your child is good at is a way of being different with your child. And you know that when you've bumped into a great teacher, what makes you hopeful when you meet a great teacher is that they really get this child, they really understand, and then you know, okay, something can really happen there. So it's about understanding the child's profile and pattern of individual strengths and challenges and constrictions. Reminds me of, I think it's a sea change to be thinking about that your child in terms of that whole profile of what they need, what they are great at. I remember this just personally because I was talking to my son's 6th grade math teacher, and it was very serious. I was called in because he was having a lot of problems in the math class in 6th grade, and she says he's no matter what, he just keeps getting up on his chair, like squatting on his chair. And I said, okay, does he concentrate better when he's sitting in that position? And I saw this aha look come across her face. She's like, yeah, now that you mention it. And she said, but I can't get his attention. And I keep trying. I said, would it help if you get his attention by maybe touch on the shoulder? And she goes, I could do that. And just everything changed. And I think of that as like the sea change. Or like, oh, if I start to think about him, I start to think of how to work with him, then I feel differently about what I can do with him or with her. And R stands for the relationship-based model. It's, as I said, we believe that development is enhanced through finely attuned relationships. And that's what a team of professionals is there to help those relationships get more and more attuned. So we know from lots and lots of different fields of study that brain integration and the neural connectivity is enhanced through play and positive affect. So we don't play and use positive affect to be nice people or to be fun or to give your child or your teen or your young adult a good time exactly. We're doing it for very strategic reasons. And that's hard to see sometimes because if it isn't fun, it's probably not working anyway, but it looks like we're just trying to be nice people or make it easy or something, and that's just such a misconception. We also know that developmental intervention is facing huge neurological barriers, so it needs to be intensive. Nobody disagrees with that. It has to be intensive. It has to be all day long. It has to be all week long. It has to be something that's not just an hour a week that's going to change those connections. So families, school staff, they have to be supported in learning to provide developmental support, but that's balanced with the just right level of challenge, social, emotional challenge, and intellectual challenge. And I'll show you examples in our videos. I might jump through some of these things just in the interest of time and having time for questions, but what's kind of amazing about Dr. Stanley Greenspan is that he observed clinically that developmentally challenged kids, particularly kids with autism, had a problem of neurological connectivity. And now with the new brain imaging technologies, functional MRIs, and PET scans, and other techniques, it's been shown to be he was exactly right. There are differences that can be seen and diagnosed as different kinds of brains that make for the clinical patterns that we see. They're all different for each different child, but they can all be, I think, boiled down to this issue of connectivity. And so we see smaller, I'll just run through this list, smaller integrated structures, fewer integrative networks, overcrowding, some under-organization in the neurons, under-efficiency, which means a kind of a lack of automaticity of processing procedures, and that means that to do things, there's excessive mental effort that's required, and that can lead to, avoidance, resistance, exhaustion, battles, and that kind of thing. But also, this is interesting, the lack of efficient processing can produce an over-reliance on repetitive behavioral routines. That explains something we never understood. What is the reason for so much repetitiveness? Well, it makes sense. If you can find something that works over and over and over, you're going to stick with it, because if your brain isn't that good at finding those naturally, the ones that you do find, you're going to rely on too much, not enough flexibility. So we know that what Dr. Greenspan spoke about clinically, we can see in the research studies that if you look at functional MRIs before and after DIR intervention, there's way more going on in the connectivity of the structures of the brain. And that's because that's what we're doing with every Floortime interaction. It's all about connecting up the child's brain through their positive affect. Affect is coded all over the brain, so if we use that, we're forcing more connectivity. So, Dr. Show so nicely spoke about our book. It's available, and I will show you how it works as a way of learning this approach in a more easy step-by-step manner. I think it's helpful to think about Floortime not as getting on the floor, but as this building up from the ground up. But what the book really helps us understand is we don't just understand kids. We have to understand, well, what do adults do? What can we do? So we have kind of broken that down into what we do to support capacity 1. We have to connect. We have to attune at capacity 1 to promote regulation and attention at any point along a child's developmental continuum. We have to be attuned first, and that's what we'll be talking about. Well, how do you do that? We'll break that down into sub-steps. You have to connect in order to promote capacity 2. These are the things the adult can be thinking about that's not as clear reading the child with special needs, or you may have read Engaging Autism, which focuses a little bit more on adolescence and early adulthood. Then you have to really think about your ways of being a responsive adult, responding to everything. And then you're ready to really focus on expanding. Some people want to jump too quick to expand and challenge, but first you got to do the build from the floor up, the ground up, for it to work. Then you focus on more pretend, imagination, to get that work going. Then you can focus on challenge. That's when I'll show you examples. And then really, really focusing on reflecting. So I'll show you an example of how it's helped us to work with families to have more structured ideas of what is this whole complicated thing. This is a parent who's had many years of help in her home, but she's been wonderful to share with us and to tell us, and it's helpful even for someone like that to have a structured guide to know, well, she's doing a lot of the things already, but why? Why is she doing them? And what is it that she's exactly doing? So this is a little conversation. Okay, this was playing before. Oh, got it.
Can do that in sometimes maybe a silly way with like, silly options.
That's for you again.
So I know we've been talking a lot about strategy 6.6. It's building bridges, helping Jacob connect his thoughts and understand the world through the theory of cause and effect.
Exactly.
And hopefully we'll do that successfully playing with him today, helping him by asking him why questions or offering him because reasons and seeing if he also can do that in sometimes maybe a silly way with like, silly options as reasons that don't make any sense. I know he loves that.
Which he really does.
Yeah, makes him laugh. Makes me laugh too. And then giving the reasonable. I'd ask him, let's see some examples here. He might say, I want to get an ice cream.
Why do you want ice cream? Why not chocolate cake, which is your favorite?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And see how, if he can keep it going, the thought of why he chose ice cream this
So
time.
why he wants that flavor?
Right, exactly. Expand as much as possible and see where he goes with it. And hopefully that leads us to a little more complex opportunities thinking for him. Maybe in the play we orchestrate something that we can then ask him, I wonder why that happened. And see if he can follow through with thinking about either why he did it or maybe why we did it. That's the best example if he can
Take on the
imagine.
other person's perspective.
That's right, exactly. It helps him understand other people's feelings, how he is in the world and how he affects others and how they affect him. And it's the building blocks of relationship.
22 other kids.
Right. You get it. And we're always keeping in mind the more complex growth from that. The day when he can answer you after you said, so how was your day? He's got all these building
Recently,
blocks.
he actually came home and he was excited when I asked him, how was your day at school? And he said, we played Harry Potter and it was so much fun.
Wow,
And
that's amazing.
it was very amazing to hear that.
That's amazing. So let's give it a try.
Sounds good.
How many more days?
Before your sister comes.
69 days. Yeah.
And what will happen in 69 days?
Sister comes. She's back. She comes.
And where's she going to come from? Is she just...
No, sorry. Some of these video examples are going to be of younger kids, but what I want to be sure that you're thinking about is not to write this off as irrelevant if you're working with an older child in your home, that what we're talking about is a way of thinking about development, a way of thinking about relationship, and a way of thinking about intervening that's going to be the same strategies at any age. If we're working on this particular issue of building bridges, making logical thinking more natural and comfortable for whomever, whatever age, it's the same approach.
It's gonna drop from the sky.
Yeah!
No. Will she come in a FedEx package and they're gonna say, special delivery for Jacob and Lucas
No,
Martin?
that's not
She'll die in the box?
Yeah.
So where is she gonna come, why will she die in the box?
What about she can go Bobby?
Oh yeah, and babies are fragile, huh?
Bobby, what about she can born in Guatemala? Look, I'm from your stomach.
She's gonna be born in Guatemala? What? Is she gonna fly here from Guatemala? Or where is your sister right now?
In the stomach. In the stomach, remember?
Yeah. And what is she doing in there? What do you think she's doing in there right now?
Having
Do you
fun
think
inside her.
she's like playing in a monkey bar right now?
She's breathing inside her egg.
Oh, she's in there.
Mommy.
No.
I came from an egg, remember?
You came from an egg, yes. And so did your brother.
Okay.
Because do you want to go to the gym? What's so funny? Are you imagining your sister coming in a different way other than my tummy?
Whatever I was racing with and
She's gonna race over here?
I want it to be like me.
In what way? You want her to
Happy,
look like?
playful,
Oh.
and
I have a good feeling she will be because she's gonna have a happy and playful big brother.
how do you know?
I don't know what you think is the kind of the crux of that particular interaction. What stood out to you? Anything? Yes,
So
Dita.
that there was, reciprocal, it was going back and forth and then to building on.
Building. She's going back and forth, trying to keep building, and she's working pretty hard to build those bridges, those logical bridges, and to push him on that. Anything else stood out? Yes, Marcy?
Asking the child for more information.
Asking for more.
What
So if we go back to that list of what the verbs are, at this stage we're really trying to begin to challenge and to use challenge, the just right challenge. And I thought my favorite part of this video, oh, yep, Deborah.
Well, I was just gonna say that I love how the boy's allowed to do what he wants, play wise, and not asked to like attune to the conversation specifically, because I think that's what lets him be more free, that he can go in and out of the basket and put it on his head, and that's not the subject of what's going on, but he's allowed to be wiggly in his body and not asked to like sit there and have a conversation.
So we understand his individual differences. He may need a lot of input in order for him to do his best work. And what is his best work, would you say? What did he do best in this moment? What did you see him able to do with that? Verbalizing.
Using his imagination.
Connecting with his mother, using his imagination. Using humor.
Showing love too.
Showing love, yes. Affection for the baby, for himself.
Yeah.
And then my favorite part is right, I thought it was where, she says, because he has a happy and playful big brother. But then I listened again, and he says, how do you know? Well, it's obvious to us how she knows she's his mom, but he's starting to wonder about her. He's developing a theory of mind. and it's like, it's epistemology, how do you know, how does one know? He asks this really open-ended, interesting question. We want that kind of thinking all the time. So, and you can see this is a really skilled mom with a lot of support over the years, but sitting down and talking about, well, what are we doing and why are we doing it, kind of honed her in and helped her to really do a wonderful job here. So we break down the whole theory in a nice, easy way to follow. We have simplified and memorizable short names for every strategy, depending on what area we're trying to work on, and a menu that goes along with it, so that, because I forget too, I need to pull out my menu sometimes and say, what did we say that was? What is that? We watch a video and say, oh, what can we call that? Because if we can name it, we can do it with much more intentionality. So they're memorizable and they're short. And we have the core methods. What are the basic approaches that you're going to be doing with a child at any age, any stage? Following cues, being responsive, building upward, as I mentioned, using play to teach, using natural interests, not forcing our interests, in order to really optimize, using problems, not solving the problems for anybody, using pretend, embracing all feelings. Remember, were you surprised when she was just relaxed when he said, oh, she would die? We don't usually want to talk about a baby, he said, oh, she would die, and mom just picks it right up. Oh, she would die, how would she die? We're not judging at this stage. We are supporting all sorts of creative thinking. And then my favorite one, self-reflect. This is often overlooked, but it is the core of DIR, is this whole idea that if that's our end goal for our kids and our teens and our young adults, then it starts with us. And we started, you know what that friendship sourdough bread is, where you have a starter and you have to pass it on and then it starts to grow and spread. I think of it that way, that as we're thinking about ourselves, getting to know ourselves better, understanding our own individual profile, understanding how our own history affects each interaction and the challenges we face as adults, that's how we're going to begin inculcating our kids into an ability to think about themselves, understand themselves, and wonder about themselves, so that they have flexibility in growing. So we have, with every strategy, we have a nice short, well, why? How is this based in theory and research? For example, this is, self-reflection is the hallmark because it's essential for effectively supporting the development of a child or young person, because it helps the adult become more open and emotionally present to the entire spectrum of internal experiences, emotions, and needs. So that's an example, and we have ways to get there, and then lots of examples of what you can do with different age kids. We also have core methods B, which really focuses in on that individual profile, understanding the child's profile, the adult's profile, how those interact, how do I adjust myself to be the best for you. If I'm really easily distracted, what am I going to do with a kid who needs to wiggle and put his feet up in the air and roll around in order to really do his best work? How is that going to impact me, and how do I work with myself to adjust myself and manage myself so I can be there with you, attuned to you? Whether I need to adapt myself, whether I need to calm you or energize you, that sort of thing. And practicing lots and lots of modulation in positive, fun ways rather than corrective, mean ways. So let me jump ahead a bit to some of the higher levels. We talked about some of these lower levels. to talk about capacity 4, complex communication, which often Greenspan talked about as using gestures and words to solve problems together and to co-create, I would say. This is where we really, really want to see those meaningful peer relationships developing in our young people's lives, so that we know that they're not lonely and that they have the most enriching part of life is really connecting with other people. So how do we help? How do we help with that? How do we boiled it down to at least eight strategies that start to work on this issue of being able to hold self in mind and other in mind at the same time. By stretching out interactions, but that's just a short title to remember what that refers to, is stretching out those interaction chains. So there's hopefully at least 50 or more circles of communication in a row as a regular process of having a meaningful conversation. Not judging, as I said, that the mom in the video didn't judge that you shouldn't be talking about babies dying, because you're trying to express an interest in all of the kids' attempts to communicate. Feigning ignorance, this mom did that quite a bit so that he could be the smart one in the interaction. Assigning meaning, remember when he got mixed up and he said something about racing and a cook, didn't make any sense, but mom supported him by figuring out and presuming that he meant something meaningful and helped him to make sense of what he had just tried to say. Playful obstruction, which shouldn't be done too soon. Some people love, it's fun, so people jump to it too soon, but not until capacity 4 do we want to be doing, because we need the other partner to understand that we are being playful when we're challenging, getting in the way and obstructing. Setting up the environment to promote independent problem solving, using more of our genuine self in the interactions so that we're more of a challenge, just like peers are, because they have opinions and we need to start to have our own opinions, and focusing on social flow. And that gets more into use of symbols and play and creativity, as I mentioned, where we are, I can show you an example where we're working with a couple of kids who are very verbal but very inhibited. They're pretty okay with us one-on-one, like in a room, you'll see them at their best, but inhibited around peers, very, very, very anxious. And see how can demonstrate thickening the plot, making their creative juices work harder because we're mixing it up and thickening their plot. So they have to be better story writers.
Pitch a strike, what are you going to pitch? Juicy but nice. Good choice. Oh, awesome. 3 and 2, full count. Here we go. Here's the payoff pitch right here. 2 outs, runner on first. Derek Jeter up to bat.
A block,
Oh, you blocked. No, he walked to second. Okay. Pressure play.
this is force.
What?
No, that. Force.
Oh, he was forced at third? Oh, okay, we got him. No, we're good. Who's up to bat? Adrian Rhodes. Okay. What's the strategy? Wait, hold on. I'll get to trip out to the mound. Okay, what's the strategy? What's the strategy?
Fastballs.
Fastballs? We're just going to pitch them straight down the middle? Okay.
Curveball.
Oh, wait. So we're doing a fastball, then a curveball? Okay.
Then, circle change.
Fastball, curveball, circle change. Okay.
First one across the brand new bridge.
Let's go physical.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't fall. Oh my goodness. I mean,
know what I don't know. What's that gonna say?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's support. Oh, it's alright.
You just built the strongest bridge. Nothing can take it down. We're gonna need some repairs on the roof. We're gonna need some repairs on the bridge right away. We're calling for backup. Seriously, we've lost the top part. It's very top heavy. Bridge repair gun.
So what did he do to help this, sorry, what did he do, what did the Floortime player help this kid to do? Any observations? Or what was he trying to help him? Oh, thank you.
Asking questions about feelings.
Asking questions about
How does he
feelings.
feel? What is he thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Is he afraid?
Yes. Asking him to imagine what the other person is feeling, which is really, really key. Okay. So at this stage, we're complicating things. We're not making things simple. We're getting kids to elaborate and delineate what's going on by getting in the way of thickening the plot. And then we get to capacity 6, which is so very rich. That's what the mom at the beginning was working on with little Jacob, where we're getting emotional thinking going. You saw some of that just now, by narrating and highlighting emotions and developing a kind of an emotional curiosity that you pointed out. Thank you. Encouraging empathy, playing therapeutically with whatever's going on in the person's life. If they can play it out, they can think it out. If they can think it out, they have some way to get free and new ways of interacting with their emotions. So that's where we're challenging. We're also challenging here the logic, the building bridges that Jacob's mom was doing, getting kids to elaborate. We're trying to incite their thinking and make connections, to plan out and to organize, summarize, and debate. Here's a quick example of a little debate. See what you think and what you notice, and then I'll show you one for an older kid.
Okay. Oh. How about?
This is where I'm sitting.
That's where you're sitting.
Okay, I shake.
Yeah.
I found a star.
Oh, you did find a star. You want me to check that out?
Yep, and I caught the ball and letters.
Okay. Star. No? Thought I felt a breeze. Was that you? It wasn't you? Breeze in here. That was you. That wasn't you? The fan. But it felt like right here. The fan's way up there. Okay, it was the fan.
That's the kid win at the end. That's the kid win at the end. Okay, it was the fan. When we get up to capacity 7 and 8 and 9, we're really trying to promote multi-causal thinking. At capacity 7, we're not just thinking there's, cause and effect, but starting to think about there's more than one reason for things to happen. There's more than one way of viewing the same situation, so that's important for understanding peer interactions with more than one friend at a time. There's multiple viewpoints. Yeah?
I have a question on this one. I have a little guy who's probably on the spectrum. I don't know that he's necessarily been diagnosed in second grade.
Mhm.
And one of his speech and language goals is what comes next. You know,
Mhm.
so you give a picture because he's very, you know, visually oriented,
Mhm.
and provide pictures, and what do you think will happen next? And he looks at me like, and I have a feeling that he feels there's one right answer. And if he doesn't get it,
Yeah.
it's wrong.
And
So I keep trying to say to him, you know, I would have a different opinion than you have, you know, let's look at the pictures to see if we can find any clues. But how do you get over that tough spot
yeah,
that a little one has?
they're afraid to make a mistake if they've been taught that there's,
Yeah,
you do this, I do this, and you respond this way, and then you get a reward,
right.
which doesn't encourage this kind of creative thinking at all,
And
like
what
this
happens-
humor
Yeah, what
or
happens?
fun.
Yeah.
And so you have to get silly and show with your affect that it doesn't really matter if you make mistakes and he says the silliest thing on earth. Let's just because you know how just when you're going to brainstorm, there has to be no naysaying. There has to be just a yes. You know, to get creative, there has to be that open possibility of whatever silliness the mom was saying. Oh, you think it's coming? The baby's coming from Guatemala.
Yeah.
Baby's coming in a FedEx box. I mean, let's really begin to push. And I think maybe a little bit of that silliness could show that it doesn't matter that much. It's just the matter that we're thinking
That we're
together.
creative, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
hard to
thank
explain
you.
that. So, develop gray area thinking. You know that black and white thinking is a hallmark of anxiety, of depression proneness, and gray area thinking is quite the opposite, where we can think in gradations and shades. And we definitely want to be aiming at the end for reflective thinking, thinking about the self in relationship to oneself over time. So I want to show you an example of that. And then you can ask your questions right after this.
Sending your school, and then you've got your friends, and it's a whole new step, right? But going back to, we can talk about the whole thing. How do you make sense of these changes? What do you think happened?
Maybe, well, I'm getting older. I've grown a lot. And I've learned a lot.
Yeah, so what are some of the things that you learned? You learned
How to be more confident.
how to be more confident,
How to talk more with people.
how to talk more.
Okay, right now I can't think of another one. Just,
Okay.
I've only known those two.
So those are the two biggest ones that come to mind for you.
Yeah, because I have,
So this particular client has been with us for a real long time. She's now a teen, and her mom was hoping we could just show her audio and not her visual. So I did a lot of cropping, and but what she says is really, really telling.
I've been shy throughout elementary school and shy throughout here, and I still am, but I have been more confident.
Yeah. Are there any other ways that you think have helped you become more confident? Other than kind of talking and sharing?
My mom and my
Yeah.
friends, I've gotten advice from them, and you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. So, mom, me, friends, have you said something about advice? So,
Yeah, because I have gotten advice from them.
Mhm. So the advice helps you feel like.
It makes me feel like I can be who I am, you know, because have you seen me, because I've expressed myself more.
Yeah, I have.
And now that I express myself more, I've experienced a lot, so I've learned from these things.
Yeah, you have experienced a lot.
I've learned from my mistakes.
Because you've done a lot of that, huh? Getting up and working on things, figuring out what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
tried stuff.
Like my taste in movies, I figured out what I don't like and what I do like.
Yes, and tell me what you don't like, what you do like. Yeah. So you were able to, based on what you saw, come to your own conclusions and determine whether or not you liked it. So what was it about these that you thought, you know what, I'm deciding that I don't like that? What was it about it?
I don't know, it's just, I don't know.
They just didn't look interesting.
They just,
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out then if you're saying it's really good. Because actually, I saw the preview and I thought that was boring.
it looked cool, it was funny.
I love your face.
I'm like, there was like this big gag at the end with Pac-Man. I mean, and that didn't make you laugh?
Well, you know, first of all, I just want to pause and say your face was fantastic. I loved it. It was like, are you kidding me?
I'm like,
Are you kidding me right now? Do you not like it?
I know remember when you said the trailer for Tomorrowland was boring? I'm like, really? After seeing all that, you think it's boring? I'm like, that's cool.
So what does this tell us about you and I?
We both have different personalities.
Sure, we do have different personalities, and we have different tastes in
like movies.
Yeah, that comes out in maybe our taste in movies a little bit. Yeah, but then on the flip side of that, we get along so well.
Yeah.
Right?
We don't care if you don't like that and I don't like this, and you like this and I like this, and
yeah. Yeah, so it tells us that we can have a lot in common and be really cool and have fun together, but then we're not gonna like everything that's the same. And there's gonna be parts of us that are kind of different, huh? But we can still have a great relationship, right?
I mean, so maybe there was some part that I was disappointed with.
Okay, so maybe kind of playing it back, you're like, well, you know, there were some positives, but overall, I'm not sure.
Yeah. But still, that was a good movie.
Yeah. Okay, so that maybe, like you said, the storyline, you thought the storyline was good.
Yeah.
Maybe the way that the director did it wasn't your choice, but overall, the storyline was not bad.
The storyline was good, the movie was good. Makeup artist is my choice.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I want to help out with. Because I am shy, so I want to do something behind the camera, and I like how to, and I think it's pretty cool to do
I
that.
want to leave some time for questions, so you get the idea of what they're doing and the kinds of thinking you want this team to get involved in after lots of years of working together. We also have sections about how to use a developmental approach for problem behaviors, and that comes at the end as our appendix. So thoughts, questions? Yes, Natalia.
What does this dialogue look like when you're working with a nonverbal child or a child who uses assistive tech?
We have assistive technology, typing, and pretty much the kids that are using typing with us, the process, the theory, the interventions, the techniques, the goals are the same. And it may take a little bit longer because there's to develop that trust, but the trust is central, of course, in the process of developing a rich communicative relationship, but we're still using the communication and the relationship to go beyond just communicating, but to self-understanding, understanding the world, understanding how other minds work and how other people's emotions work, and just working on issues of identity. And without assistive technology, we couldn't do any of this. If we were going back to you need to communicate in the ways that other people communicate, that doesn't work. That's not a floor-time approach. So we've had clients represented in this room who we've worked for a long time with, mostly using typing together to get to these higher levels of thinking. Questions?
Can this be started at any age, or it has to be from?
Yes, it can be started. We've had kids referred at age 14 or 16, and we work with them as long as we can. So 5, 6 years, 7 years. Yes, go ahead.
I don't know, if you don't, I can ask you this after if it's gonna take up valuable time, but I was wondering, what's the difference between this and RDI? Like, what do you think, and what do you think about RDI?
Well, they have the same initials, so it's gotta be good. We are working together with RDI folks to really change the way the laws are in California and across the nation. Hopefully, we have the best law in California by far right now because of some of the work that we've done with our nonprofit coalition, the DIR Floortime Coalition in California. To the funding now is required by insurance for any age. Any age. There's no age limit in California. There's no dollar limit in California. It's amazing. But unfortunately, the innards of the law, it says it was supposed to be for all evidence-based approaches, but you have to be vended with your regional center as a behavior analyst to provide the service. So the coalition, DIR Floortime Coalition of California is sponsoring a bill. We're trying to get it passed. We need signatures. If you all are coming out to the Profectum conference on March 18th, 19th, and 20th at the Pasadena Civic, we'll have letters there for you. You can contact me through my contact info to sign letters saying we need better, we got to fix this law so that families throughout California can hear about and access a different approach, whether it's RDI or the CERTS model or the Jasper program model or the Denver Early, all these evidence-based approaches, DIR Floortime, that your doctor, your psychologist recommends for your particular child. It's just extremely important that there's parent choice involved. And so I ask you to get involved with our coalition by signing letters, by becoming a monthly donor. We need donations to keep the lobbying up and all the efforts that we've been doing over the last 5.5 years. So RDI is based on relationship and development. It's just not quite so, it's just a little bit of a different approach, I guess. Came from a different person, and he was definitely influenced by Greenspan. So, yes?
What about insurance coverage for clients that are not regional center clients?
Yeah, that's another great thing about the California law. It is better than any other state law. They don't have to be a regional center client. Yeah. Yes. Andrea.
Regional center just found for Floortime, just for 2 years. I hear that.
There's, you know that you can hear all sorts of things. The biggest myth that you ever will hear parents say all the time is, well, my child turned 3, so they told me I had to go to my school district. Yes. And they're never going to question somebody who's an authority and has all the knowledge. There's all sorts of crazy stuff that's said like that. Most of our clients we have for a number of years.
And they are funded by regional centers?
Yes, many of them are funded by regional centers. Most of them are. We've had hundreds of families. And the law does not say 2 years. The law says your child gets what they need individually. So it's really sad that you'll hear crazy stuff. That's why it's good to be here and hear from other parents. Other quick questions? Yes?
Is it a lifelong process almost, or, I mean, do you continue doing this?
This is a way of thinking about relationships. It's a way of thinking about growth. It's a way of thinking about how we grow together by our own ability to keep looking at ourselves on videotape and seeing, oh, I didn't realize I did that. Why do I do that? What does that have to do with me and my history? And how can I better attune to you? It applies, we have many parents who talk to us about it's affected their relationships with all their kids, not maybe just their child who has developmental challenges.
Do you see the progression? Do you ever go like forward and then back?
Well, you always have to start back. Even this girl who's doing so beautifully, we always have to think first about, is she able to get regulated in intent?
So you still have to.
Yeah. You always start with the
Last question.
thank you.
Well, it's really a comment, and I've known you for years, and I just wanted to say that for me, Floortime is, and I want to talk about other other modalities, but Floortime to me is about heart. And it's about things are better caught than taught. And I love the idea of Floortime because it's always about, it's really about, looking at the big picture in a way that's inspirational or intuitively. And I just really always thought that this was always the best approach.
Yeah, I think what we would say about that is we agree that we're looking for big picture and outcomes of children who are empathic, spontaneous, joyful, creative people. And so that is a big picture sometimes when you're starting out.
And it's those two things about normalizing every single thing and unconditional positive regard about every single thing that the child would say or the person would say. No judgment. And I think that's different than other modalities. That's just from my point of view.
It's humanistic in a way, and it's very, very different assumptions that you start with. Thank you very much.